How's it going, everyone? How are you doing? Oh, welcome back to the channel. My name is Josh K, the Lonely Hermit, and today, ladies and gentlemen, we're getting into our week 4 roundup. Now, before I get into this, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. Plug all the socials down below. Check out all the coaches. Go subscribe to all of them so you don't miss any of the matches. Of course, subscribe to this channel, the Elite Battle League channel, and also check out the Twitter. Go follow that, and do all that good stuff. Now, you might have noticed there was no matches this last week, so there's quite the shakeup that happened over the last week or so. Well, through all of that, essentially week 5 is not happening, period. The Elite Battle League is gonna move straight into the playoffs after this, after week 4. Unfortunately, Landon Inferno man had a medical emergency. He had to go to the hospital. As of recording this, he's still in the hospital. Hopefully he's out by the time this comes out. But definitely give him some well wishes. Go show him some love. Speedy recovery and all that good stuff. We love you, Landon. It's very unfortunate that that happened, because it essentially forced his hand, and he dropped out of this season. With that, because Always More Videos was going to retire by the end of the season, he decided in order to keep it even, he's going to drop out as well. So with that being said, those are essentially the two teams that would have missed the playoffs on both sides, although they weren't really, well, in front of it there's a chance, but they are essentially taking the places of the teams that would have missed the playoffs anyways. So that essentially pushed us into playoffs. There was really no point in doing week 5 unless, you know, just placement, but there really wouldn't have been a crazy shakeup. I mean, there would have, but there wouldn't have. There was only like a couple of big scenarios that could have happened if we did the week 5, but it essentially was only going to move teams around. That was it. But yeah, no week 5, and we're going to be heading straight into playoffs. The play-in games, which we're going to talk about later, are on October 8th. So this Saturday it should be, I believe, October 8th. So those are the play-in games. Like I said, we're going to go over that later. And then the playoffs round 1 are on October 15th. So yeah, so we're heading into playoffs. Week 5 not happening. A couple of the coaches we're talking about still possibly posting their battles, but they're not official. They're just, you know, the lost battles. So yeah, this Saturday there are 2 matches, the play-in matches, to seal the final spots in the playoffs. So yeah, like I said, we're gonna go a little bit more over it later, but just wanted to get all that out the way, because I'm sure for those of you who follow the Elite Battle League, you probably were a bit surprised that there were 0 matches this last Saturday, and that's the reason why. So yeah, with that being said, the Kentucky Kinglers and the Iowa Incineroar are out for the season, and everyone else is still in. That's still happening and all that good stuff. So yeah, quite the shakeup. So that's kind of going to affect the way I talk about these matches. I actually am re-recording this because the other one makes no sense now. So yeah, with all that being said, I've taken enough time. Let's talk about week 4 of the Elite Battle League. First up, we have the Atlanta Bravery versus the Essex Espions. I gotta say, Pidge, man, your prep was awesome. That's what really stood out to me. His prep for the match was clearly on point. He outplayed and outmaneuvered Atlanta at plenty of turns. He just made all the right calls down to starting with the turn assist, which I believe is still his best lead. Maybe even Mew, depending on how he builds it, but that turn assist is just great for Matt's team. That first turn was incredible. He eats the hit from the Dynamax Hermosa and returns with a Dynamax Cannon, which I think would be around a 250 base power, you know, when you take in the fact that it doubles on Dynamax Pokemon and Stab. I don't know if there's anything else in effect. Something 250 to 300, somewhere in that power range. So Pheromosa's defenses are awful, so it just got destroyed. There's no way it was going to live that hit, even with the Spadef raise. So that first turn was not great for Atlanta. Not the best plan in the world. I mean, I'm not really sure what was the intention there, just to hit hard and hope Pheromosa gets a kill early and gets that boost, but I'm not really sure the ultimate plan. Maybe you can explain down below, Matt, what the ultimate plan was right there. But honestly, just what really stood out was just Pidge's prep. His calcs were on point. He brought a physical Mew for a reason, because he expected Matt to expect the special Mew, and it just went pretty much completely in S6's way. There was a play that was interesting to me that could have potentially changed the course of the match. There were a couple plays, but the first one that really stood out to me was when Mew came out against a +1 Quiver Dance Volcarona. Matt, coach of the Atlanta Bravery Bandy Ice, decided to, there is something flying around in my room, that's awesome, decided to Quiver Dance again instead of attacking. Now I did the calculations. If he had Bug Buzz the Mew, because, well, yeah, if he had Bug Buzz the Mew, he would have brought it about like a quarter health, something along those lines. It would have done a lot of damage. Point is, but instead the Volcarona Quiver Dances, takes the max rockfall, dies right away, of course, because it's, you know, it was a physical max rockfall, and those special defense raises meant nothing. But then Crustle came out, it lived a hit and shell smash, so it outsped the Mew and did a lot of damage to the Dynamax Mew. So that Mew could have gone down by the Crustle's hands. Would it have made a huge difference? Questionable, not really sure, because what it would have done mostly was save the Genesect, because then when Crustle died by the Mew, Genesect came out and it got Blaze Kicked and died right away. So I think it would have made some difference. At least that Genesect would have had a chance to do something more than just die right away. So that was kind of weird. Plus, when the Genesect was out versus a Mew, I also think he probably should have E-speeded instead of trying to attack. He likely would have killed that Mew. There's a good chance. It's sorry, that was really bothering me. There's a good chance he would have killed the Mew, but it's again up in the air. It's all speculation. In hindsight, I'm sure we could check the calculations and maybe it would have happened, but that could have made a difference. But honestly, again, what just really stood out to me was just Pidge's prep, his overall prep, his calculations, and the way he methodically played the match. I think he just did really well to outplay and outmaneuver Atlanta, and that's why S6 walked away with a 6-2 win. So I think they did really well. This is the Pidge we honestly have never quite seen. There were flashes of it last season. There have been flashes of it this season, but this is in my opinion the best Pidge that's performed in a match. You guys can go ahead and disagree with me. I think this is one of his best, if not his best match, period. Just prep, calculations to his in-game maneuvers. Got a little lucky with a couple of decisions that Matt made. They could have changed the course of the match, so who knows. But yeah, I think this is definitely one of Pidge's best games. If he keeps playing like this, he's a shoo-in for the final. Or at least him and Bob are really gonna go at it. I mean, it's not gonna be like how they faced last week. But yeah, S6 walked away with a 6-2 win in that one. I actually meant to preface these matches by saying every single match this week was one-sided. Every single match this week was really one-sided. There were a couple matches that maybe could have changed because of the one-sided decisions, but for the most part they were all one-sided, especially by the scorelines. So continuing on, we have the DC Starmie's versus the Tijuana Gengar. The DC Starmie's walked away with a 6-2 win. Now Tijuana went into this match fully expecting to lose because of the Reshiram. The Reshiram was a really big problem for Tijuana's team. The draft that Luigi has doesn't really like Reshiram a whole lot, so he was expecting Reshiram to do a lot of work against his team, and of course Timmy, I'm sure, recognized that as well, hence why he Dynamax Reshiram first turn. Now I honestly think Tijuana did a good job of just stalling the Dynamax. That's really all you can do when you know that Reshiram does a lot of damage. Instead of just handing it free kills, stall it as much as you can. Let certain Pokemon go down that you're not going to need later on, like Poltegeist. But the biggest talking point in this match was when Buzzwole came out against Reshiram. I believe at this point the Reshiram had 2-3 kills. I don't quite remember. But Buzzwole comes out against the Reshiram, and Luigi misclicked and accidentally clicked close combat. He meant to Dynamax instead of clicking close combat. If he Dynamaxed, he definitely would have killed the Reshiram. And that Buzzwole just would have started to build up momentum, and this match could have gone differently. Would TJ still have, would TJ have pulled off a win? That's the debatable part, but it definitely would have made this match closer. It absolutely would have made this match much closer, but unfortunately there was a misclick, and that Buzzwole has just gotten unlucky 2 weeks in a row. And yeah, that was really rough to watch. It's just one of those ones where you're like, dang, like man, like, because it's just one of those feelings where you know that match could have gone a lot differently had that misclick not happened. So it's unfortunate, but you know, it happens, and that ultimately led to DC walking away with a bigger win than maybe they would have gotten if that Buzzwole, there was no misclick with the Buzzwole. So it's really unfortunate, but you know, it is what it is. You just kind of got to move on. I swear, it's like every time I start talking, that thing comes out of nowhere. Stupid little fly, whatever it is. Anyways, it's really annoying. So yeah, regardless, that was the main talking point. Other than that, it was a fairly dominant match for DC. They walked away with a 6-2 win. Moving on, we have the LA Inferno versus the Texas Tyranitar. The LA Inferno reverse swept the Texas Tyranitar. Mewtwo, your week 4 MVP, walked away with all 6 kills as LA walked away with a 6-1 win in this match. The first turn, pretty much, I will preface this by saying, in my practice battles, I found out that my team just outmatched Texas's. It was a matchup that I don't want to say I was like, I'm gonna win this, but it was just like I kept winning all my practice battles. Mewtwo was getting at least 3 kills in all those practice battles, and I was like, I just don't think this is a good matchup for Alan, the doorman. And the plan that I had just worked out perfectly as well. I led Drapion, taunted the Aggron, you know, so it couldn't use Stealth Rock. I set up Swords Dance. All I wanted to do with, I even said in my video, all I wanted to do with Drapion was just break Sturdy, hurt Jirachi, try to kill Claydol. Those were my 3 goals with Drapion. If it did any of those, I'd be happy. It broke the Aggron Sturdy, which allowed Mewtwo to come in, set up in front of the Aggron, and just wreck shop. Because once I got that second nasty plot off, there was really nothing that could take a hit. I believe the only 2 Pokemon that could take a hit were, at both Dynamax, by the way, were Jirachi and Torkoal. Jirachi didn't come, Torkoal didn't get Dynamax, but I believe in my calculations, I honestly should have written down, I believe I built a fully specially defensive Torkoal, and it would have taken a hit Dynamax. Jirachi, though, was the one I was worried about taking a hit from the Mewtwo, from the +4 Mewtwo, but it didn't show up, so I didn't really have to worry about that. But honestly, even if Mewtwo went down somehow, I had my options in the back. I had Thundurus, I had Excadrill, even Primarina does a lot of work against Texas. So it was like, through my prep, I just found out it was just a bad matchup for Texas. It just was not a good matchup for them. Mewtwo alone obviously handles his team really well. And that's really all that needs to be said. It was just a bad matchup, bad team matchup. It happens. It's really unfortunate it happened the way it did, but you know, I gotta do what I gotta do to win. I had a lot of ground to cover after getting swept week 1, so I'm tried to, you know, inflate that KD as much as possible. But yeah, it's just a really bad matchup. That's really all that needs to be said. I think the 2 teams just didn't stack up well against each other, and ultimately that was proven by Mewtwo getting all 6 kills. So yeah, moving on, we have the Walton Wingles versus the Indiana Igglybuffs. The Indiana Igglybuffs walked away with a 6-1 win over Walton. Again, another fairly good matchup for Indiana. They didn't really have a whole lot of struggles in this match. There were a couple of questionable calls with a couple of Walton's decisions, like the switch into, so I believe it was Metagross versus Cinderace. Cinderace kills Metagross. Now, mind you, at this point, I believe the side of Indiana still had a Reflect up. So Walton brings out Tapu Koko, tries Acrobatics first. It obviously isn't going to do a whole heck of a lot because of the Reflect. The Cinderace takes it well. Fortunately for Walton, this is where the hindsight kind of kicks in. Fortunately for Walton, the Gunk Shot missed from the Cinderace, and when Koko Volt switched the next turn, it killed the Cinderace. Now on this turn, though, I think Nate had a couple of different options here that maybe he could have done instead. He could have Thunder Waved, the Cinderace and then Volt switched out or something along those lines, or B, he could have gone to Noivern as well, set up the Tailwind, because Noivern was more than likely going to take a hit from the Cinderace, at least one, or at the very least you're going to get a hit off. Obviously, Nate didn't know that the Cinderace wasn't fully built into speed, so the Noivern should have outsped it, could have gotten the Tailwind up, and that would have helped a ton. So he had a couple different options there. I'm not a huge fan of the acrobatics first turn Tapu Koko. Obviously, it did lead to the Cinderace's death, but it was not the most amazing play in the world for Walton. Didn't really benefit them at all. But then once Cinderace died, Dragonite came out, set up one Dragon Dance, and that was all she wrote. That was all she wrote. Dragonite got 5 kills. He killed everything but Metagross. It's a menace. It is your season MVP, actually, because now that the season is over, the regular season at least, the season MVP is now crowned. It is Dragonite. I believe it is 13 kills and 1 death. I could be wrong because it got 3 kills, it got 4 kills, and then it got 5 kills. I think it's 12 kills and 1 death. So yeah, Dragonite is your season MVP. It just tore teams apart in the last 3 weeks here. It nearly took me out on its own, which would have been an insane comeback. But yeah, Dragonite fully deserves that season MVP. I'm actually very excited for it to be on the logo, to be honest. But yeah, Dragonite walked away with 5 straight kills, and Indiana shut out Walton. It was not pretty, but I will say Nate's still showing signs of improvement. I do like some of the things he did in the match. I mean, he did the Dynamax thing again, and you know, blocked out Dragonite's Dynamax, at least some of it. You know, 1 turn of it. But there were still a couple decisions. Again, it's hard doing this sort of stuff because of hindsight. Like, obviously, if Nate knew Dragonite was going to come out after the Volt Switch, send out Mr. Rhyme first. But then again, if Mr. Rhyme came out first, that Dragonite probably wouldn't have hit the field as early as it did. And maybe Nate could have done some extra work before that Dragonite did some damage. Then again, Magyarna probably would have came out, and Magyarna probably would have killed the Mr. Rhyme. And instead of Dragonite getting 5 kills, it might have been Magyarna getting 5 kills. So who knows? I think this is just just a bad matchup for Nate. It was unfortunate. But I think he's still showing signs of improvement. I really do. But yeah, Indiana's team was just not a good match for Walton's. And again, Indiana walked away with a 6-1 win. Moving on, we have kind of by default the Commissioner's Battle of the Week. The Florida for Alligators versus the Iowa Incineroar. No complaints here this week because it just makes sense. It's like the closest scoreline this week. Florida beat Iowa by a scoreline of 6-4. This was an interesting one because, unfortunately, we got kind of more... Remember how I talked about last week? We kind of got more of week 2 Landon than weeks 1 and 3 Landon. I really wish... It's unfortunate that, you know, what happened. I really wish we could have seen how Inferno Man would have done against Nate. But this is not the best match to go out on, unfortunately. He didn't do setup hazards with Skarmory, which ultimately I don't think would have made much of a difference. The Togekiss on the side of Florida did incredibly well, and I think honestly Lionheart played really well in front of the Tapu Fini. He traded the Aurora Veil for the Light Screen, and he just played well in front of the Fini. The Fini wasn't really much of a factor in this match. The Light Screen did help the Arcanine, but that was about it, and then the Arcanine eventually died anyways, so it really wasn't that much of a difference with the Light Screen. Again, I think Lionheart handled that Tapu Fini really well. But then an interesting play happened. So Lugia kills Arcanine. So Landon's plan was to send out Weavile. According to his calculations, Triple Axle would kill the Lugia, which makes sense. It breaks the multi-scale and then continues to keep doing damage, obviously, and progressively more damage. So Lionheart kind of saw that coming, so he switched out from Lugia, went into Alolan Ninetales. Now, the Alolan Ninetales was left at around 60 to 70 HP after it took that Triple Axle. And this was the play, I think, that defined the match. Weavile's Poison Jab would have absolutely killed with the range that that Ninetales was at. But Landon instead decides to switch. I think it was either to... oh man, I can't even remember who he switched now. It was either Skarmory or Fini. I think it was Fini. Yeah, it was Fini first. He switches to Fini first. the Ninetales was able to freeze dry the Finny after getting up in Aurora Veil, by the way. Then Landon sends out Skarmory, expecting Skarmory to outspeed Ninetales, which no, because Ninetales has like 30 base speed higher than Skarmory, and even if the Ninetales wasn't built to this speed, I genuinely think that thing still would have outsped the Skarmory. But regardless, he was expecting the Skarmory to outspeed the Ninetales, which it didn't. The Ninetales kills the Skarmory, and then Weavile comes out. Now, keep in mind, the Aurora Veil is still up. Weavile poison jabs the Ninetales. The Ninetales lives on 4, and the Ninetales is able to kill the Weavile before it eventually went down to Venusaur. But that switch, I think Landon said the Ninetales living that poison jab was what defined the match. It really wasn't. It was his switch out from the Weavile into Finny. That's what killed the match for him, because he could have gotten rid of the Ninetales, and instead he handed Lionheart 3 free kills essentially, and the Ninetales walked away with 3 kills. I mean, it was pretty impressive Pokemon. Ninetales is a great Pokemon, but that play really defined the match, and it just allowed Lionheart to take all momentum and just walk away with a fairly comfortable victory after that. It never really felt like Iowa was going to get back into it. Even if that Weavile switch didn't happen, I think there still would have been a plan from Lionheart to take that Weavile out and just kind of work around the rest of Lion's Pokemon. I think it would have been closer. I think it would have felt a lot closer, but I still think Lionheart had the momentum in this match all the way through, and ultimately, obviously, led to a win. Also, when the Venusaur came out, Landon could have Sunny Day'd to give him a chance with the Chlorophyll. That's just, just to try and give some kind of chance, fighting chance at the death. Speaking of which as well, speaking of being at the death, with his Giratina Outlast, Lionheart fully expected him to Dynamax, which he did, and killed the Barraskewda, which kind of didn't need to happen. But Whimsicott comes out, starts substituting in front of the Giratina. Landon started to get a little frustrated. It's tactical. Like, you don't want to send out a Dynamax Giratina versus Zacian, which was ultimately always going to be the last matchup, with Giratina being the last Pokemon. But you don't want to send out Zacian gets a Dynamax Pokemon. It just doesn't make sense, especially when it doesn't get Behemoth Blade. There's no point. That was very tactical on the side of Lionheart to stall out the Dynamax to make sure Zacian could get in a clean switch and be comfortable enough to Swords Dance and crunch the Giratina, which effectively finished it off. With that bonus health, even a Swords Dance crunch might not have killed. So I think it was the smart play on Lionheart's part to just make sure that he was going to kill the Giratina by getting rid of its Dynamax. And yeah, ultimately Lionheart walked away with a very comfortable 6. Despite the scoreline, it was a very comfortable win, 6-4 scoreline. So Florida showing signs of life in this season, man. They just play well. They played well every single game, even when they lose. They've just been playing well, and they fully deserve that win right there. So yeah. Moving on, we have the final match of Week 4, the Detroit Luxrays versus the Kentucky Kinglers. Detroit walked away with a 6-2 win. I will give you a little insight. I helped Always More Videos train for this match, and in the half hour that we prepped, we kind of found out that this was a terrible matchup for Kentucky. The fact that it was 6-2 was, even Derek said in his video, that was big for him, because I swept him, I think 3 or 4 times with Max's team, and the other matches that we had were not pretty either. That's when we just figured out he's gonna need a lot of luck. He's gonna need game reviews to make a couple mistakes and hope for the best. If that Zapdos never max Airstreams, Archeops kills it, probably, or something close to that, and maybe Archeops can do some work. It was just not a good day for Kentucky Kinglers fans. Plus, Derek brought Blaziken for the Scizor, and the Scizor didn't show up. So he was essentially already down 1, pretty much going into this match. And then maybe the light screen on the first turn with the Clef Key would have helped a little bit more as well, instead of the spikes, because the spikes never really made a difference at all. Plus, a couple of Derek's predictions were a little bit off. He fully expected Seismitoad to come in on Galvantula, but instead he still decided to click Thunder instead of Energy Ball, even though he predicted it. He even said it out loud, Seismitoad's going to come in, but he still clicked Thunder. I think Energy Ball would have been the better move, to be honest. Just you're gonna hit the Kyogre in front of you for damage, and then if something else comes in, it's gonna take damage as well. So I think Energy Ball would have been the better play there. But regardless, this was just a really bad matchup for Kentucky. There's really not much to be said. It was pretty cut and dry, straightforward. Zapdos came in, Dynamax got a couple kills. Then Ludicolo and Kyogre got a couple kills in between, and Rotom Heat was able to finish off the match by getting a couple kills on its own. That's pretty much it. There really wasn't anything crazy. The Archeops living, that's a little point that I actually saw. The Archeops living was, I believe it got a I forget what defense boost it got. I think it got a defense boost. I can't really remember, but regardless, the sand does raise rock type special defense, so that's why it was able to take that hit from the Zapdos. And I think it got a Spadef boost before, something along those lines. I think it had another boost, but regardless, it does get the Spadef boost anyways. But yeah, that was a pretty cut and dry match, and you know, it is what it is. It was just a really bad matchup for Kentucky, and their win streak is over, and their time in the EBL is also over. But Derek really impressed this season, man. He really proved like 110%, if it wasn't already proven before, this guy's a legitimate battler. So he's definitely riding off into the sunset, knowing damn well he is a very, very good battler, one of the best that the EBL will ever see. So yeah, with all that being said, next up for us is our play-in match predictions. Next roundup is going to be pretty short. We're going to just go over the play-in matches, and that's it. There are only 2 matches this Saturday, like I said earlier. Now, the way the play-in matches work is the number 4 seed and the number 5 seed are going to be facing off in both conferences, and the winner gets the number 4 seed and the last spot in the playoffs. Before we really start heading into the actual playoffs, round 1. So there are a couple matchups that are already decided. There are a couple teams that are waiting on the play-in matches. For the Mega Conference, the DC Starmies will face the winner of the first play-in match, the Florida for Alligators or the Tijuana Gengars. The other match in the Mega Conference are the Detroit Luxrays versus the LA Inferno. In the Dynamax Conference, the Indiana Igglybuffs will face the winner of the Texas Tyranitar and the Walton Wingles. And then the other match in the Dynamax Conference is the SXS Beyonds versus the Atlanta Bravery. So everyone but the teams in the play-in match get a week off, an extra week to just prep and focus on their future matches, or just take a break. Some people need it. I really did. I've been taking this time to relax. But with all that being said, let's get into the play-in matches. First up, like I said earlier, we have the Florida for Alligators versus the Tijuana Gengars. Again, the winner of this game will play the DC Starmies in the first round of the playoffs. Now, Florida, again, I said it earlier, they really have not put in a bad performance this season, despite the 2-2 record. They are, the 2-2. Despite the 2-2 record, they really haven't put in a bad performance this season. Whereas Tijuana have kind of been doing this a little bit. Now, don't get me wrong, they have gotten unlucky, especially against Detroit and against DC with the misclick. They have gotten very unfortunate, but at the same time, I think that team, I said it in the preseason roundup, this is the most explosive team in the league. With that being said, they're more like a glass cannon. They can dish a lot, but they can't really take a lot before it really starts to hurt with all the damage that they'll take. I think Florida will have a plan for that. I think Florida, to be honest, have a better team. The problem are those boost legendaries. Buzzwole and Glastrier could be a problem if Trick Room comes into play, because Florida has a fairly fast team. That could also be a massive problem. Then again, Florida has 2 Prankster Pokemon to try and do some work. I don't remember if either of them were Trick Room. I don't think they do. But regardless, they can still do a lot of control within the match, because even if the Trick Room's up, they have priority. So there's a lot of ways that these 2 teams can work around each other. With that being said, I'm going to take Florida. I think Lionheart's the better strategist out of the 2. But at the same time, Luigi is just weird. He's a weird battler. He's very surprising. He'll try different things. He's not afraid to just go at it with the other team. Obviously, we got proven week 1 against me. He's not afraid. He's not afraid at all to try a plan. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. If it works, he's gonna walk away with a big win. But I think Florida's gonna have a plan for that. I think Florida is definitely gonna be ready. And again, those prankster Pokemon are gonna be a big problem for Tijuana. So I think Florida walk away with a win in that one, and we'll have a date with the DC Starmies. The other playing match is the Texas Tyranitar versus the Walton Wingles. The winner of this match will have the very tall task of taking on the Indiana Igglybuffs. Now, both of these teams are winless on the season. I will say between the two, Walton has shown more signs of improvement. They are getting outside help. Not saying that's a bad thing, because Nate has expressed interest in just getting better at battling in general, which, you know, makes sense. It's one thing to have someone essentially battle for you, pretty much, and it's another thing to try to actually learn how to battle on your own, and do all that good stuff. So I personally think this is leaning more towards Walton. Now, there's a little bit of a problem with Walton with Nate's scheduling. He's unfortunately, this came right at a time where he was going on vacation. So normally, if he had more time, I would honestly lead more towards Walton, but because of the situation he's in, because the battle kind of had to be rushed, I think Texas maybe will have some kind of semblance of a plan. It's kind of tough because it's short notice for Walton, but it's also short notice for Texas. So there's really, I feel like, I could be wrong. This is all speculation on my part. It feels like there's probably not going to be a whole lot of prep in this match. But with everything that's going on with Nate, you know, him prepping for his vacation to make sure you're getting all that stuff, maybe it's a little too chaotic for him. Maybe the plan he came up with was a little, was very rushed, and maybe it just wasn't good enough. I think between the two of them, there's a little more chaos on Nate's side right now. So if anyone's going to win with some kind of prep, it's going to be Texas. I'm taking Texas in this one. I think they'll have a date with the Indiana Igglybuffs, but I think this one's going to be kind of scrappy, kind of all over the place, because, again, the prep might not have been there for both of these teams. So this could be a bit of a scrappy battle back and forth. But I'm going to back Texas, I guess. It's kind of a weird one. But yeah, I'll take Texas over Walton in this one. But whoever wins this has to take on Bob. That is not fun, especially when you're winless on the season. Fortunately, whoever wins this will get their first win on the season. So maybe that'll give them a little bit of confidence heading in against Yeltnib. But regardless, I'm going to take Texas in that one. So my two predictions for the playing matches: Florida over Tijuana, and then Texas over Walton. And then next week, like I said, it's gonna be a bit of a shorter roundup. We're gonna go over the two playing matches, and then we'll talk about the rest of the playoff matches that are gonna be going down. So with all that being said, hopefully you guys understand the decisions that were made with the Elite Battle League. Again, no week 5. We're moving the playoffs up. Inferno Man and Always More Videos are no longer a part of this season. Always More Videos is no longer a part of the EBL, at least for now. We don't know if he's gonna come back at any point. He keeps saying he's never gonna come back, but you know, Derek's weird. So yeah, obviously, again, send some well wishes the way of Inferno Man. Hopefully he is out of the hospital at this point, fingers crossed. But send some love his way regardless. And yeah, so hopefully, again, you guys understand the decisions that were made. It was made in the best interest of making sure this season wouldn't get fully derailed, and we were able to still stay relatively on track. So hopefully you guys understand. And if you enjoyed the video, and if you're new here, be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Check out the socials down in the description. Check out all the coaches in the description. Go subscribe to all their channels so you not miss any of the matches that are left for this season. For these 2 matches we have coming up, you want to go to Lionheart Plays, Latin Luigi, why am I blanking on their names? The Doorman and Nate Tube. You want to check out their channels, especially for these playing matches this Saturday. You do not want to miss those. They're shaping up to be fairly intense, to be honest. So yeah, you don't want to miss that. Again, check out all the coaches down below. Subscribe to all of them regardless. Subscribe to the EBL channel. Check out the EBL Twitter down below. Go follow that. And of course, be sure to share socials with our friends, family, everybody you know. Let the people know that Lonely Hermit, the Elite Battle League, is where it's at. We'll see you guys in the next one. Bye.